Hello geographers, and welcome to another lesson in the Changing China unit. In this lesson we're going to aim to answer this question: is China facing another demographic crisis? Now the word demographic comes from the word demography, which is the study of population. So in other words, we're asking whether China is facing a population issue. So we're going to be diving into China's population structure, look at the changes that are happening and what the impacts might be. So as you can see, this is lesson 4 in our learning journey, and we've already covered quite a lot about population as well as some of the geographical features of China, all of which are going to be useful for us as we move through the unit. So hopefully you've got yourselves a pen and some paper and a ruler. If you haven't, pause the video and go and grab those. If you have, if you could jot down today's title, is China facing another demographic crisis? And also pop today's date in your work as well. Now then, on your screen you can see 5 different statements. All you need to do is read each one carefully and decide if it's true or false. And then in your book, record what you think. Now if it's false, you might want to think what the correct statement should say and jot down what you think it would be. So pause the video now and have a go at doing that. Okay, so let's go through our answers then. The first one says a famine is when people experience an abundance of food. Now hopefully you realise that word abundance means to have a lot of food and have therefore written down that that statement is false. A famine is actually when there is a food scarcity, and we talked quite a lot about this last lesson when we said how China experienced a famine in the 1950s. The next statement says Chinese families traditionally preferred boys as they would be expected to support their parents in old age. Again, hopefully you've written down true. Now that was a tradition that they believe has led to the major issue of a gender imbalance in the country, and it was made worse with female infanticide that again we found out about last lesson. Our next statement says China's one-child policy was started in 1989. Hopefully you've been able to spot that that's actually false. The policy started in 1979. D. Women were sometimes forced to have abortions if they became pregnant a second time. So as a result of the one-child policy, it was sometimes quite brutally enforced, and that statement is actually true. Not only that, but after they've had the first child, many women were forced to undergo an operation that stopped them from having any more children. The last statement reads, fertility rate in China is now 1.7 compared to 2.7 in 1979. So this is very much suggestive of the fact that the number of children being born to each woman has massively declined. And that is actually true. So we're going to consider why the fertility rate is still very low. And even though the government is trying to change that one-child policy kind of idea, many people are still sticking to just having one child or perhaps no children at all. So we're going to consider why the government is concerned by this and what it might mean for the country overall. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to consider this question: why do people want to have few children? Now, if you're able to work in a pair, that's brilliant. If not, you could do this on your own. But I'd like to think about this. In 2016, the Chinese government relaxed the one-child policy, and they allowed married couples to have 2 children. The policy has been relaxed again in 2021, and the government has now allowed couples to have 3 children. Despite these changes, though, the birth rate still remains very low. So I'd like you to try and come up with between 3 or 4 reasons why it is you think couples are still deciding to only have one child. There are some images on the screen that you can see there that might prompt you to think about what the reasons might be. So take a moment and pause the video and write down your ideas. Okay, so let's go through some possible reasons why people are choosing to have fewer children. So one of them, as you might have been able to work out, is cost. Now, according to the Times in April 2022, if you're in the UK, it's probably going to cost you about £200,000 to raise a child until they're 18. Not surprisingly, many people are put off by that. More specifically, many people worry that when they first have a child and they want to return to work, the cost of nursery care is prohibitive. A second reason why people are choosing to have fewer children is because women now have much greater choice and freedom, and many do not want to simply stay at home in a traditional role. Women have had greater access to education and therefore greater career opportunities, and many women decide they don't wish to have children at all, or perhaps they postpone them till later, until they're much more financially secure or independent. As a result, this often means they will have fewer children. Another factor in women's choice about having children is maternity leave. Many women feel that they're overlooked in their careers if they choose to take maternity leave, and so that may well also be a factor in their decision. Another reason you may have spotted from the images is the fact that people are very concerned about the world. They're worried about things like political corruption, health scares, poverty, and even climate change. And many people believe that if they have more children, that actually that's causing problems with regards to overconsumption and overuse of our resources. Another issue, or perhaps another reason, should I say, as to why people don't want to have children is because they simply don't feel that children can fit into their lifestyle. They don't feel particularly sentimental about raising a family and instead wish to have more freedom in their lives. Now, you may wish to explore these ideas further by watching a short 20-minute clip that actually applies some of these ideas to China specifically. So why is the government so concerned that people are choosing to have fewer children? Before we try and answer that question, we're going to look specifically at the population structure of China and how it's changed over time. And you can see on that graphic to the right there how the population pyramid has been changing. And it shows you how it's changed between 2012 and how it's predicted to change by 2030. Now, what I'd like you to look at very carefully is to consider each of these bullet points. Firstly, think about the numbers of people that would be regarded as the elderly population. How has that changed? And link that to life expectancy. How long are people living until? Thirdly, think about the birth rate. So look carefully at the base of the pyramid. What does it suggest is happening to the birth rate? The working population is roughly between the ages of 20 to 64. Have a look about what's happening to the numbers of people in that category. And then finally bring it all together. Thinking about that group of people classed as the working population, you can also consider the idea of dependency ratio. So when you think about dependency ratio, it's how many people is the working population actually supporting. And that, remember, includes both the elderly population as well as the younger population. They are two groups that are dependent upon the working population. So think about how that dependency ratio might change. Now, to do this work, you might want to use the population pyramids that are shown on the next screen. On here, you can see that the blue side of the pyramids are showing the male population, and the red side is showing the female population. Along the bottom, you have the raw numbers of population in each of those categories. The ages go up the side in the y-axis of the population pyramids. So you might like to annotate those to show what's happening to each of those 5 bullet points that we've just discussed. So pause the video now and have a go at annotating your pyramids. Okay, so what did you get? Did you spot that there's actually a very significant increase in the elderly population? We've got quite a few more occurring in the older age ranges. We've also got the idea that more people are living longer. The life expectancy has increased. as we're finding that people's health and wealth are improving. You may have also spotted that we've got a much narrower base to the pyramid, which again suggests that our birth rate is declining. Now, China is worried about this changing demography in terms of its population structure, because they're worried it's going to negatively impact on economic growth. If you've looked at the idea of dependency ratio, you might have an idea as to why they are concerned. The suggestion is, with fewer people moving into working age, but an increasing amount of elderly, the country will struggle to support those people no longer working. And that perhaps is one of the biggest concerns facing the Chinese government now. So the question then is, well, what can be done about this population crisis? Now, I'd strongly recommend you have a watch of this video clip in a moment. It's only about 10 to 15 minutes long, but it really gets you to think about what the potential solutions might be. So have a watch of that video clip first, before then moving on to the next task.
A few weeks back, China...
So, what do you think the Chinese government should do? Hopefully you got a few ideas from the video clip, but there's also a list of possible options here next to the black bullet points. I would like you to choose one from the list, or perhaps another one that you've seen on the video clip, and explain why you think the government should do that particular solution. Then I want you to choose an alternative bullet point and suggest why that should not be something that the government does. So choose one that you think that the government should do, and then one that you think they shouldn't. So pause the video now and see if you can have a go at that task. And finally, if you remember, this was the question at the start of the lesson. Is China facing a demographic crisis? And I want you to think about, well, to what extent do you actually agree with that statement? First of all, consider, well, what are the benefits of an ageing population? What might they have to offer? Secondly, what might be the challenges the country faces with an ageing population? When you're thinking about both of those elements, which ones seem more significant? And therefore link it back. Is it right to say that China is facing a demographic crisis? Now, ideally, you might want to do this with the person that you're sat next to, so you could talk through your ideas together. And maybe they could score you if you can try and bring in some of the words that are listed in the table below. Alternatively, if you haven't got anybody to work with, maybe you could write your own argument as to whether you agree or disagree with that question. And again, try and incorporate some of those key terms in the word box there. And that's it for today's lesson. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you again next time.